Okay.
All right.
It's called Shlif in Hebrew.
What?
Shlif.
Shlif. Oh.
So, I said in Hebrew, okay?
Yes.
הכנת תה?
No. Not right now. I'll probably forget drinking it anyway, so. You sure?
תביא לי רק כוס, רק כוס לנו. אז יש לנו כבוד גדול לארח את המורה קלסנג וונגמו. היא הנזירה הראשונה בעולם שקיבלה את התואר מלומד טיבטי, וזה באמת כבוד מאוד מאוד גדול ומאוד מרגש לארח אותה כאן בגומפה שלנו. גשמה נולדה בגרמניה, היא שהייתה צעירה, היא טילה בעולם, בחסר כסף וטילה בעולם, גם הייתה בישראל וטילה פה ועברה דרך אלומות ותל אביב, משם למזרח ולהודו. בטיולים בהודו היא הגיעה לדרמסלה ושם היא פגשה את הבודהיזם. ותוך כמה חודשים היא קיבלה עליה את נדרי הנזירות. לאחר שנתיים בדרמסלה היא החליטה ללמוד את השפה הטיבטית ונרשמה לתוכנית של 16 שנים לימודים לתואר מלומד טיבטי במכון לדיאלקטיקה הבודהיסטית בדרמסלה. בשנת 2009 היא סיימה את תוכנית הלימודים, ב-2011 העניקו לה את התואר. היא מלמדת מ-2004 פילוסופיה בודהיסטית לסטודנטים הערביים. היא מלמדת חומרים מאוד מאוד מורכבים ולא פשוטים, והגשר הזה בין אדם ערבי לבין החומר הלימוד הבודהיסטי הפילוסופי הטיבטי מועבר דרכה בצורה פשוט פנומנלית ונפלאה, וזה באמת, שוב פעם, זאת זכות ענקית שהמורה הזאת יושבת היום איתנו. Many thanks that you agreed to come to my students.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for coming. Let's start with a few moments of breathing and then setting the motivation for tonight. So now to set your motivation for tonight, so let's think maybe we're able to gain an understanding of the teachings on shamatha, so that one day we'll be able to generate those 9 stages ourselves. Increase our mindfulness, introspection, and eventually be able to effortlessly focus our mind as a tool to also gain insight about ourselves and other phenomena. And to also generate great love and compassion for other sentient beings. And so that one day we'll reach the awakened state of a Buddha. And actualize our fullest potential. So let's then start with a lesson on shamatha, or the 9 stages of meditation, which is actually not that difficult, but very complicated and difficult to do. Right. And so there are many different reasons for working on generating shamatha. In general, even not even taking it from a Buddhist point of view, just saying in general, it makes perfect sense no matter what you do to generate this type of awareness, which will be explained tonight, what it really refers to. Well, one very simple reason is that, and this is also supported of course by modern science, which used to believe that phenomena, the world, can be discovered as in like in an objective fashion, that there's this objective reality that we can all understand. Nowadays, scientists have come to the understanding that there's no objective measuring, there's no objective weighing or what have you. It's all the mind that is needed in order to gain an understanding. So basically everything we know, everything we experience, it's all the mind. The mind experiences things, it interprets a situation as being pleasant and unpleasant. It all comes down to our consciousness. Even colors and shapes, whatever we perceive around us, we uniquely perceive them because of our consciousness. And the thing is, if our consciousness plays such a big part, so hearing sounds, seeing things, hearing sounds, etc., and then making sense of everything, it's bizarre that we don't know enough about our mind. It's actually bizarre. It's like we have a house, we know every corner of that house. We look at that house, we know what's inside it. Every now and then we take old stuff out and put new things in, we air it, we clean it. We do that with our mind. We have our mind much longer than we have our house, and still we spend hours and hours in taking care of things in our house. Spend hours and hours on our mind, making it stronger, more flexible, eating the right kind of food. We just don't do that with our mind. We totally neglect the thing that is always with us, that is so important in terms of our experiences. So that being the case, Buddhism offers this opportunity to actually look at the mind, observe the mind. And for that we need a certain degree of concentration. So concentration is a tool extremely helpful, and it's very much part of Buddhist meditation of different types, even analytical types of meditation. Well, without a certain degree of concentration, we won't be able to do them. So concentration therefore plays a huge part in developing the mind, well, getting to know the mind, developing the mind, transforming the mind, and becoming a happier person. So, therefore, the importance of concentration, well, why is it so important? Because without it, the mind is really powerless. The mind is not able to reach certain understandings. I mean, just simple in school, if we're too distracted, we won't be able to follow a lesson. So on such a degree, or just simple everyday life, definitely we need concentration. But also a lot of negative and harmful emotions. I usually discriminate between afflictive emotions and afflictive views. So like harmful views we have about reality that just don't accord with how things really exist, they give rise to harmful emotions. Anger, hatred, aversion, craving, jealousy, and so forth. But those can easily dwell in our mind if we don't have concentration. If we have a certain degree of concentration, we can learn to control them, well, get to know them better, and then slowly learn to reduce them, etc. So that's why Shantideva says, a person whose mind is distracted, so the great Indian philosopher, great Indian master, I should say, everyone is familiar with Shantideva, right? No? So he composed a text called Bodhicattva, or the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. An amazing poetic work. And so in that work, as part of many other verses that he gave in that work, but one of two lines he gives with regard to shamatha, he says, a person whose mind is distracted dwells within the fangs of afflictions. A person whose mind is distracted dwells within the teeth, the fangs of afflictions. So, therefore, plays such a huge part in our mental development. And so the technique in Buddhism for developing more concentration is the practice of calm abiding. It's described as calm abiding. That's the Tibetan word. Shine. Shi kind of means peaceful, calm, you could say. Ne means to abide. Okay. And so it calms the mind and enables it to abide with a certain object, to not go here and there and everywhere, but to remain with a certain object. And that can be achieved. Actually, if you do it well, you can do it in 6 months. But to be able to achieve what's called calm abiding, I'll explain more about it, but it's basically the ability to focus on one object with great clarity and great intensity, stability, for 4 hours. Not just 4 minutes, that's already a lot. 4 hours, being able to focus the mind. And that is said to be really helpful in terms of gaining a better understanding, of course, of ourselves and others. And the analogy they sometimes give is like our mind, our psychological makeup is so intricate. Our psychology, our mind, I mean the different types of awareness, the different types of emotions, so intricate, so complicated. So that can be compared to like a wall painting, like a mural, like a wall painting, very intricate, very beautiful. And in order to understand that, you need a candle, a light. If it's in a dark place, you need a light which burns brightly and stably. As a stable kind of, you need a stable kind of flame. If it moves back and forth, you won't really be able to see anything, it just gets you dizzy. And if it lacks brightness, of course you won't be able to see all the details. So therefore you need both. So concentration is like a lamp, like a light in our mind, as a tool to seeing reality, the reality of our own mind, but also the reality of the eye, the reality of phenomena other than the eye. So it's like a lamp, it's like a flame that is very bright and very stable. Okay, so if you think of it that way, and if you can hold it for long enough, it gives you the opportunity to really go deeper into the nature of phenomena. If you're too distracted, you know, it's like anything, like even a laser light. If it goes here and there, it won't be able to penetrate, I don't know, stone or what have you, whatever it can penetrate. Whereas if it's bundled and intense, then it can actually penetrate through things. So there are a lot of analogies with regard to this type of concentration, and it also explains why it's helpful and why it makes sense to develop it. So now the main point is like how to practice initially. So even before going into those 9 stages, there are 9 stages, actually there are 10 stages. There are 9 stages and calm abiding. 9 stages you go through, and then the result would be calm abiding. It's not that the 9th stage is calm abiding, that state of being able to concentrate for at least 4 hours, and there's more to it, of course. But there are actually 9 stages first, and then you reach calm abiding. And you can practice this, like I said, some people have achieved it within 6 months. But then for that you need to have all the causes and conditions. So you need to very intensely dedicate yourself to that practice. So what would you need to do? There's a few things that the texts say. Well, limit your busy activities. The busier we are, of course, the harder it will be for us to just sit down, take the time, and then not think of anything but just the focus of our meditation. So it's important to leave behind our busyness. And that's in the 21st century harder than it was, for instance, in Tibet. Okay. It doesn't mean it's not possible, it's just a little harder. Also, it's good to be in a quiet place. This is only for people who haven't developed calm abiding yet. Once you have calm abiding, you live in the center of New York City, who cares? You're so focused, you could be anywhere. But initially, you need a certain environment. Therefore, a quiet place is good. So mentally, let go of busyness, etc. Try to be in a quiet place. Avoid negative influence, like avoiding negative influence. Why? Because any afflictive view or afflictive emotion, such as aversion, craving, what it does, it distracts the mind, it scatters the mind. It leads to a scattered mind, but it also leads to a lethargic mind, a kind of really extremely dull kind of mind. It leads to scatteredness and dullness. So actually, when the negative kind of emotion arises, a non-virtuous mind arises in our continuum, not only does the mind get scattered, but it also gets really heavy and lethargic. What's the word for lethargic in Hebrew? Lethargic? Huh? Yes?
והיעדר פעולה, כאילו הפעולה של התודעה נעשית יותר ויותר איטית וכבדה.
Does that make sense? Kind of really sunken and kind of heavy. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. So, therefore, negative influence such as watching violent movies, reading violent books, for instance, or being around people that promote craving and anger, etc. So during that time, we need to avoid those, unless we're not influenced by them. But if we are, definitely need to avoid them. Avoid too much food, too much sleep. Okay, kind of a balanced state. Of course, we all know when we eat too much, we're so heavy and meditating, that's the last thing we want to do. And sleeping too much is also an issue. Sleeping too much makes us feel more tired, etc. So that should be avoided. And then that's where like the external, but then internally, we need to know satisfaction. Kind of generate a certain degree of satisfaction with what we have. Because if we keep thinking, oh, there's a sale somewhere, I better get ready for the sale, or I don't know, there's some whatever, special offer, or I'm not satisfied, I want more, I won't be able to sit down calmly and engage in meditation. So we need to know satisfaction, a certain degree of contentment, at least for the time we're practicing. And then moral behavior. Really important. That's one of the main causes. Ethical behavior. With ethical behavior in Buddhism, I'm sure you know that, refers to refraining from harmful actions. Harming yourself, harming others. Because again, and that comes mainly from the mind. Of course, if you have the motivation to benefit someone and you pull their tooth, that's not considered to be a harmful action. If you're a dentist, for instance, it's really your motivation. So harmful actions are determined by the motivation we have, the wish to harm. That transforms any type of action into a harmful action. And so therefore, a harmful action, again, is motivated or is influenced by one of the afflictive emotions, one of the afflictive views, harmful views. And as we've heard already, they scatter the mind and make the mind more lethargic, make the mind dull. And so therefore it makes sense. It makes sense to avoid any kind of unethical behavior. So the basis for calm abiding would be a very ethical, non-harmful way of life. And of course, what else we need to do? We need to learn about calm abiding. We need to learn about it, understand what it means, what the stages are. Even if you're not on the 9th level, if you're not on the 8th level, if you're... Is it clear? Yeah. if you're not on the 8th, 7th, whatever level, if you know where you're going, you can adjust your behavior accordingly. You already know if you, there's a great emphasis in the Buddhist tradition that you don't just learn about the first level that you're kind of attempting to reach. No, you also learn about the higher levels, because then it makes sense to you that you do this, that, and the other, and you do it out of an understanding. So right from the beginning you learn about these stages, and then of course your understanding deepens as you actually move through those stages. But also always to be aware that shamatha is only one tool, and that if you develop shamatha, it's very easy to get attached to it, because it feels good. Once you have a certain degree of concentration, then you worry less because you're focused on your breathing or you're focused on something else. So certain worries, certain anxieties, they cannot arise in your mind, or they don't arise in that moment. So it's like, oh, I feel so much better now. Wow, I'll just do that. Makes me feel better. But that's like taking a sleeping pill. It's like temporarily may kind of get you around thinking about these things, but you haven't solved anything. It's just temporarily not there because of the degree of concentration. So very important that even if you are interested in doing this practice, to not neglect analytical meditation. Well, for the time being when you do shamatha, no. There is a time when you need to do analytical meditation, and I'll talk about it. But in general, once you have a certain degree of concentration, you need to go back to looking at your own mind, reducing negativities, etc. Calm abiding in itself cannot do that. So that's important to understand, and to also watch your attachment to the practice, because we're very good at changing attachment. Previously I was attached to, I don't know, being a punk, now I'm attached to being a monk, right? I mean, or a nun for that matter. I mean, we just bring our attachment and we change it. And so to be aware, especially with shamatha, it can lead to that kind of attachment. All right. Now then, with regard to the actual practice, well, there's a certain posture that you adopt. Now you're all aware of the posture, right? Do I need to go through it? No, not really. Like, you know about the legs, can be crossed, but if you find it difficult to sit crossed legs, sitting on a chair is fine. The legs, the reason for being crossed legs is because, well, basically in Asia, traditionally people didn't have chairs, so they always sat on the floor, so it was the natural position they would take on. But of course the reason for your legs being cross-legged is to keep your back straight. If you're like, both legs are in a similar position, there's some symmetry, and then you also lift your behind a little bit, then your back is straight. So likewise, if you sit on a chair, you shouldn't cross, probably not like this or like that, but just sit kind of like, should be symmetrical. And then maybe put something behind to keep your back straight, because that's most important. The back is most important because of the energy that flows along the spine. So if it's straight, you're more likely, more able to concentrate, versus if it's crooked, well, slouched over, it's not good for your back anyway. But on top of that, it's a little harder to concentrate because of the energy not flowing unrestricted. Then also if you can keep your eyes open, that would be better. Keep your eyes open, kind of looking in the space in front of you, keeping your neck a little bit bent forward. So too high up, you have a problem with excitement, with the scattered kind of mind. Too low down, then you may have a problem with laxity, with like the mind being too dull, not being clear enough. So there should be like a balanced kind of level of your jaw, of your head, basically slightly bent forward, and you need to find out what works better for you. Your shoulders should be level, again symmetrical, and then usually it's recommended to put your hands in this shape underneath your navel. Okay, so wherever it's comfortable, put it in your lap. and then you put your thumbs together. It creates kind of like a cycle, if you like. So for the energy to move around, right hand above left hand, and then your thumbs touching. That's how the texts explain it, but I'm sure there are positions maybe you feel more comfortable with a different position. So some people put their hands on their knees, right? And, yeah, their hands on their knees. I don't know, but I'm more used to this position, as I just prescribed. What else? So the neck, oh yeah, and your tongue should touch your upper palate, this part, just in front of your front teeth, because that stops you from drooling. If you, for many hours, you sit there, if your tongue is like, if you don't touch your upper palate, is that clear, the word upper palate?
החך העליון, סמוך לשיניים.
Yeah, that one. So you keep it there, and also your mouth and your throat don't go out. Okay, so, all right, so that's in terms of the position. All right, let me just put this a little bit. Okay, and now you need an object for meditation. What are you going to focus on? So there are different possibilities. In some texts they talk about what is your main afflictive emotion. So you could adjust it according to that. But then again, for some people, like if you have more excitement, then breathing is beneficial. But some people find that disruptive, and their excitement, their scatteredness grows stronger. So maybe breathing doesn't work that well. Breathing, of course, is very neutral. It's not difficult. It's there all the time. So you may choose watching your own breath. I'm familiar with that. So you could count your breath. You could think breathing in, breathing out if you want to. You could watch the sensation at your nostrils as you breathe in and out, or at your abdomen. It's again up to you. Or if you find another place where you have a strong sense of your breath, you choose that. But once you've chosen, stick with it. Because if you've chosen an object, I'll give another alternative for an object, but just to say that from now on, you try out a few options, and once you find one works best, do not change after that, because the scattered mind wants some entertainment, wants something different, and so it may want you to choose a different object, but then you're just avoiding the issue of just staying focused on one particular phenomenon. So therefore you choose either breath, or instead that if you have very strong physical craving, like physical lust for instance, you could just sweep through your body and go through the different components of your body. Skin, flesh, muscles, bones, etc. And just kind of basically see that the body is made up of all these different parts, and there's nothing super attractive about it. Neither in your case nor in someone else's case. So sweeping through your body would be another alternative. But the object that is very much recommended, especially in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, is the image of a Buddha. Right? Not an image, not a statue, like the actual Buddha. To visualize, to become a little familiar of what the Buddha stands for, and then according to that, basically visualize the actual Buddha. It's like in the form of bright light in the space in front of you. It's said to be really efficient, but it takes some time to explain why, which I won't have, and so you may do your personal research on that if you're interested. But to give you a few reasons, it is said that there is something coming from special objects that stand for enlightenment, for instance, like the Buddha. Buddha, I guess, an enlightened being, that we accumulate more virtue versus just watching our own breath. It's because of the object being virtuous, and therefore there are certain objects, if we think about them, we actually accumulate virtuous karma. And that takes too much time to explain. It's a little bit like, what? How weird. But it's been explained again and again, so for now, that would be just something, if it makes sense to you, maybe you can believe it, but there's certain reasoning that actually establishes that. Anyway, but there are other reasons. You also be inspired. You're going to be inspired to have the Buddha right in front of you. And of course, here it's not about the body as much, but you can't visualize the mind. But of course, the body resembles the Buddha's qualities. So it's the result of the incredible qualities that the Buddha has, which is why, or the incredible meditation also, practices the Buddha has done. So therefore, it's inspirational. And they say also, when you're in trouble, because of having visualized it again and again, it has a calming effect. It will appear to you at times of distress, at times of trouble. The image will appear to you, and you grow calmer, just naturally calmer. Your inspiration comes through again. At the time of death, it's very helpful to be calm and so forth. So there are a lot of reasons there for why choosing the image of a Buddha, visualizing an actual Buddha. But you need to see. So also you can read on this in certain texts. There's instructions given about the size. It should be like 6 to 7 inches high, above the level of your eyebrows, and with bright light, because that keeps you from being focused, fully focused. So giving it bright light. All right, and just sweep through it and kind of get to know it. Kind of go up and down and until it stays stable. But as you can imagine probably, it's harder than the breathing. And most people just go for the breathing. But I don't think you should choose something just because it's easier. If this is really beneficial, maybe an option. Anyway, okay, so that's the option. And then the sessions. You have sessions every day to do the meditation. So I'm just talking as if you're doing it. Of course, I don't know whether you're doing it, but it's just more personal if I say, if you do such and such, right? So whether you do or not, whether you do this practice or not, is of course up to you. All right, but if you were to choose to do it, you find a quiet place, you're less busy than before, you do, with regard to the preparatory aspects that I just went through. So once you're ready to sit down, do it for however many months. Now, you start off with very short sessions. Very important, short sessions. That's always recommended, to start off with short sessions, because if we make them too long, we're going to get tired of it, we don't want to do it any longer. And what is so important with any Buddhist practice, you should do it joyfully. There should be a sense of joy. I want to do this. It makes sense to me. I want to do this. So don't stretch the joy too much, because at some point you really, and if there's no longer any joy, you can't force yourself. Forcing yourself is never a solution. You can only do something that you like to do. And so even though you focus on the Buddha, you may just start, in order to calm your mind, just do with the breathing. You can actually do that. That's not part of your actual session, it's just to calm the mind. All right. And now we start with the 9 stages, having kind of given that introduction. And there are actually 2 ways, and I mean the other ways of course too, but in the Tibetan tradition, you have Maitreya in a text called Differentiation of the Middle and the Extreme, differentiation between the middle and the extremes. He here talks about calm abiding by overcoming 5 faults through 8 antidotes. So there are 5 kind of obstacles to calm abiding, 5 obstacles, and you overcome them by applying 8 antidotes. So that's how Maitreya in this particular text talks about how to get to calm abiding. And then there's another, so Maitreya was a great master of the past. He taught very important commentaries on the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, a text called Abhisamaya Alankara. Anyway, never mind all the details. Anyway, he was pretty reliable. So, and then there's also Asanga. They lived around the same time, so 900 years after the Buddha's passing away. And he taught a text called Grounds of Hearers, levels or grounds of hearers. And Maitreya, the same person, in another text called Ornament for the Mahayana Sutras, in both texts, they mention the 9 stages, the 9 levels. So therefore, there's usually nowadays given a combination of those two. You go through the 9 levels, but you also explain the obstacles, those faults, those mental states that basically prevent us from attaining calm abiding, and what are the antidotes to overcome these faults. So it's kind of a combination of those two. So, what are the 5 faults? All right, I'll go through them just now briefly. Faults. Faults, how do you say?
מה שמכשיל אותנו בפני לתרגל מדיטציית ריכוז, ושמונת הנוגדנים, אנטידוט זה נוגדנים, כאילו כמו תרופות, מה אני מכניס לתוכי בשביל שהפולט האלו יצאו החוצה.
Maybe 5 mental obstacles.
מכשולים מנטליים.
If you want to, I'm just using the Tibetan word fault, that's the word that is used in the scriptures, so I just literally translate it. But mental obstacle would also be appropriate. Well, first one is laziness. Laziness, okay. Laziness actually, you hear me use that word, laziness, but it can actually, it means something slightly different than in English, and I guess in Hebrew too. It's because there are 3 types. There are 3 types of laziness. The first one is wanting to engage in neutral actions, other than meditating. So kind of having a type of attachment for doing things that are just neutral, they're not even negative. Like, they use the example, stitching. I don't know how many people engaged in stitching at the time, like sawing. In the text it talks about sawing. Stitching or sawing, right? There's nothing negative about that. So you have a hole in your trousers, you stitch them. But you can get attached to it, and it can be an obstacle to meditating. Why? Because laziness is a state of mind that causes you to procrastinate. What is the Hebrew word for procrastinate? Yeah. So it causes you to kind of, oh yeah, later I'll meditate. Not right now, I have to stitch my trousers. Right? Or I have to talk to someone. Or I have to clean my bathroom. Or, right? I mean, we're ever busy. We always feel like we have to do this, that, and the other. And everything is more urgent than meditation. Right? So it doesn't even have to be like a negative action. It's not like, oh, I need to kill my neighbor. No. Or, or have a fight with my, I don't know, my relatives. No. Just a neutral kind of action. Just procrastinating. Oh, I do it later because I have this to do, and wash my car, and and talk to my friends. All this. So, therefore, that is one type of obstacle. That's the first laziness. The second laziness is wishing to engage in negative actions. All right, so that's already obvious. And the third is to feel I can't do it. Right? I can't do it. I'm not really able to. All right, so that's a problem, obviously. So it's a type of laziness. Kind of like putting yourself down. Like it's almost like an excuse. Oh, I can't do this. I can't do this. So a healthy sense of self-confidence would be like, there's nothing I cannot do. Right? If I just put my mind to it. But sometimes we have that as an excuse too. As an excuse, right? Like we go like, I know 6 months of meditation. No, I can't do that. I'm not good at this, right? Actually we are. We just don't really want to do it. So that's one problem. Another problem is forgetfulness. Now don't think forgetfulness, again, has to be slightly interpreted. It's like forgetting the object as you're meditating, right? I'm trying to focus on the breathing, but I'm thinking of dinner. I've forgotten the object. Not being able, so it's just another word for not being able to stay with the object. All right, that's forgetfulness. All right. And then there's something called laxity. Not laxative. Laxity.
This also can be an obstacle.
But not a mental.
The sixth one.
It was not a mental though. Okay, so laxity, or sometimes it's translated as mental sinking. It's not like being lethargic. It's not like being like this total dullness. No. That total dullness, it's like a negative state of mind. Laxity is not. It can be virtuous and it can be neutral. It's not negative, but it's still an obstacle. So it basically It only arises when you meditate. When you engage in advanced meditation, only then you have laxity. So in the English, if you could look up the Hebrew for laxity, like in English, of course, the word is used in a different way, but we have to borrow a word. Did you find the word?
The word is רפיון או נרפות. רפיון או נרפות. זו המילה בעברית. רפיון.
Does that make sense?
Like
Yeah.
דרדלה.
Dardali is the word? Dardali, let's say Dardali. I can't remember Dardali. So don't be Dardali. So anyway, this laxity or mental sinking, it's actually only arises, this particular one that is mentioned here. So this only arises during advanced meditation, and it's kind of an internal distraction that destroys the intensity and clarity of your mind when trying to focus on an object. Okay? So your mind, it's like this heightened kind of state of like being attentive. That is diminished and your mind becomes kind of cloudy. Right? But it's typical just for this particular meditation. And it's caused by over withdrawing the mind. Withdrawing the mind. When you do calm abiding, when you do meditation on calm abiding, you're moving the mind from being outwardly scattered, sights, sounds, all sorts of ideas, you bring it inwards, you withdraw it inside. Okay? But if you do this too strongly, then you have this sense of dullness, dardali. You're dardali, you have this laxity, okay? So, alright, so that should be enough for just this much. Okay, now, laxity. Then there's excitement. Excitement is caused by attachment. It's a type of desire. And again, it prevents you from keeping the mind inside. Excitement, like being scattered kind of excitement, that kind of excitement. And of course, that's an obstacle to meditative stabilization. So really, those two are usually seen, either it's you have laxity or you have excitement. And they're like different directions of the mind, but both keep you from being focused. Okay, great. And now you have the antidotes to that. There are 8 antidotes. The antidote to laziness, to this kind of like procrastination, putting it off, not engaging in meditation, is faith of belief or faith of conviction in the qualities of calm abiding, right? Faith in like the qualities, understanding. Like, of course, understanding would be best, but you can only have an understanding once you have calm abiding, right? Once you really have calm abiding, then you know the benefits of it. So before you've achieved this, you have faith. Of course, in Buddhism, it's very important. Faith must be temporary, only for the time being. Faith based on reasoning and only temporary until you come to a first-hand understanding. But here, you can't have a first-hand understanding of calm abiding unless you have calm abiding. Then you see the benefits, which is why you just have believe. You believe in that, like faith of belief based on reasoning, which is one obstacle to procrastinating. Secondly, the aspiration to attain calm abiding. Okay, that's the second one. And then the third one is exertion, making an effort, working hard, joyful effort, working hard. So those 3, and they say also a type of pliancy, a kind of mental flexibility that comes kind of as a virtuous kind of factor. So mental flexibility, which is usually the result actually of this type of faith I just described, aspiration and exertion. If you have those 3, your mind becomes more flexible, more pliant with regard to this practice, just with regard to that. So anyway, that is the antidote, and let's come again once we go through the 9 stages, but that is the antidote to laziness, that's right. Then the next, so this type of faith, aspiration to attain calm abiding,